This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 525, recorded on March 3rd, 2022. Here in Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a dry... Mike, I mean, it's been a while since we've had some rain, but I go outside and it just feels like we're in a desert. Everything's brown. If anyone started a fire, the whole state would burn down.
The grass is like crunchy, dead,
bad.
you know?
Yeah. This is the driest I've ever seen it here. And it's just kind of nasty. I'm kind of looking forward to some rain kind of this weekend I think we get some rain and some snow coming here. But yeah, it's just been super dry. Marv, of course, you're in Orlando, right? In the Orlando Fort Lauderdale. It's close. It's all flooded.
But it's our fall here. Our leaves are turning brown.
Yep, and then it just goes right back to summer, right? Yeah. So, of course, we'll post the show with some show notes, and tonight that'll be important. Marv's going to talk about some of his new stuff that he's been doing. We'll, of course, include those links in the show notes out at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, you can join us now Saturdays noon Central for the premiere. So we'll put this as in a premiere mode on YouTube again on Saturday. If you want to watch it again, jump in the chat room, get some chat going. It's always kind of fun to do that. I'm always watching the Last Hour Cigar Authority while I'm chatting with you guys and doing that. And it's just a fun thing to do. So if you haven't been out to the site yet, go out to theaverageguy.tv/YouTube. That'll take you right to the page, and that's available noon Saturdays, and we'll premiere. We've been doing that as well. And then just a programming note, if you've been subscribed, and you may not even know this, but if you've been subscribed to Home Gadget Geeks through Podomatic, that was the original back, 10 plus years ago. We started on Podomatic. And this week, I had done, you do some of those you guys will appreciate this. You do these trial versions of things, or, they offered a special discounted rate and like $5 for a $50 service. You want to take it? And I said yes. And then last year, I didn't cancel it. So they charged it $120 this time. Right. And I was like, oh, and they wouldn't refund it last year. And so I took my credit card off off the record and said, okay, at least they won't charge my credit card. Right. And then should have sent a note to flag myself to downgrade the account. And I didn't. So they charged it again, even though it wasn't on record. Yeah. A little sketchy. So I contacted them.
Yeah.
A little sketchy. Right. On that one. Even so, I contacted them and they're like, oh, it's well within our policy. We warned you and you didn't. And I said, no, I don't think that's going to work that way. And we went back and forth. I was super nice to him on the emails. I'd always end the email with thank you for the refund type thing, just being, just kind of being that way. And in the end, they said, no, we're not going to give you your money back. So I said, that's fine. I'll just dispute the credit. I'll just dispute it on my credit card. And I'm sure that my credit card immediately credited. It's in a dispute mode. Okay. All that being said, one, if you have these subscriptions, this is probably the time of the year to make sure that you know what you're doing and you've got them tracked in some way, right? Type thing. Because it's one of those things. I should have left myself a reminder. I've heard from several listeners who've said that every time they set up one of those, they also set up a calendar reminder to cancel that type deal. So it's just I'm terrible at that. But it's just too bad. So if you're on Podomatic, you might not know it, but you check your feed, because you would have gotten before this one, you would have got a note from me saying, get off of Podomatic, because we're moving. So I just don't want it to stop on you. I'm going to keep it around for a couple weeks or so, and then we're talking about changing your podcast tonight with Marv. But if it just stops, I don't want it to stop on you. So just make sure you're subscribed to the regular feed that's out there. And if you have any questions, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv, and never ever use Podomatic. Ever. Under no circumstances are you ever allowed to use them again. Mentioned his name a couple times, but Marv B is with us tonight, coming back in, brand new podcast. Marv, welcome back. Good to have you on Home Gadget Geeks.
Guys, thank you for having me. Sorry that we are 2 months behind.
No,
when we were gonna be on before.
Yeah, no, and some family issues which you've taken care of, and that's great. We, but just good to kind of have you back. Catch us up. Last time we had you on, you were doing Podnuts Pro
Yes.
podcast, and then you've changed that. Talk a little bit about some of the changes that you've made to the podcast.
Yeah. So basically, Podnuts Pro had been around for several years. I had been hosting it for 5 years. And there was a couple of things that it was time for a change. One, I was tired of trying to explain to people, what is Podnuts Pro? And the people that were deep in the trenches with the podcast when it started were fine. But I was trying to do things, grow the podcast, monetize the podcast, do some other things with branding. And so I was stuck with that name, and I was stuck with the network that it was a part of. And not that they were doing anything bad or wrong, but I always had to go through them to get things done. So I'm like, you know what? I think I've got the handle on this stuff. So I wanted to break away, do it myself. So I rebranded. It's basically the same show, but I've just changed the name. It's now called the IT Business Podcast. And we still do the same thing where we talk to other techs, we talk to business owners, we talk to vendors in the channel, and we share stories and tips. And our goal is to help people run their IT business better, smarter, and faster.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also trying to have it appeal to all IT professionals. So, a lot of the shows tended to focus on, high-end business or MSPs, the managed service sector. But I also wanted to appeal to solo technicians and techs that were working in a corporate space. So a lot of the things that we do are really the same. We might have a different twist on the tools, but for those of us that are doing business support, we're all trying to manage an Active Directory network and group policy stuff and protect our customers from ransomware and make sure they're backed up properly. So we're all doing most of the same things. So why not just talk to everybody?
What I love about you've been doing too is that, so I listened to the last one, right? Your latest episode just came out last night. Was the last night the one about?
Yes.
Yeah. So you had an attorney on. Now, is that a normal co-host for you?
Yes.
Okay. So he's an attorney. He did a fantastic job describing essentially, number one, MSAs, your master level service agreement, and then your SOWs, your statements of work, and how those connect, and how you can make sure that our clients reading them. Does it matter if they read the MSA? Can you just post it? Do they need to sign it? All of those questions, and then you really dove deep into the fiduciary duty rule being applied to MSPs, which I thought was fascinating. And I think even though I'm an attorney and I was fascinated from the attorney angle, what I love about what you did is I put myself kind of in the IT person's mind who is not a lawyer, not trying to think about that, but this is something they really need to know, right? This is something that's very important to them. And even if they don't manage that for their team, maybe they have a legal team, or maybe they're a small business and they are their own legal team, right? They are doing their own agreements. It's things that are outside the realm of the normal day-to-day for IT people, but that are extremely, extremely relevant and important. So I really like kind of that angle of, yes, it's still IT. That's geared towards anyone in this industry. Even at my business, if it was one of our IT people listening, I guarantee the next time they see the in-house counsel, like, hey, by the way, I heard about this. How are we doing that? Like, is that actually okay? Are we doing it the right way? Can we change the way we do it? So I love that angle that you take.
Well, it's one of those angles that most techs don't think about, especially if you're just starting out and say, hey, I'm doing this on the side, no big deal. I start supporting businesses. What if something happens? You lose their data, or they do get ransomware. They can come after you. But the bigger thing is, a lot of times they'll take templates of agreements that they find online, and I'll just, cut and paste my stuff into it. Well, it may not be specific enough to you or your state, and even your city, because a lot of times cities have different rules and stuff. And if you're dealing with medical, there's the HIPAA laws that come into play. Banks have their FINRA laws. Lawyers all have their stuff that deal around discovery and how they're supposed to maintain court records. There's so many things out there when it comes to business. So what I'm trying to do is say, look, I'm not just going to talk tech with you. I'm going to talk business stuff with you too.
Yeah.
You know, your attorney, your accountant. A lot of techs don't deal with accountants. We have an accountant that comes on. We're going to have a couple of city officials on that talk about why you have to have a city license or an occupational license if you rent a building. Because if a client comes and drops off a computer and slips on your premise, you're responsible, not the landlord, you. So all things we need to think of.
It reminds me of like a local chapter that you would join for whatever industry you're in, and you would all gather and you'd have a presenter that speaks on a different topic, all related, but maybe not directly what you're doing, that helps you with every angle of your business, right? Because I loved the way that you guys talked about your MSA. So if you're an MSP or if you're an IT and you have agreements with your customers, historically those have been creatures of contract, right? It's contract law. Is it in the contract or is it not? If I put it in the contract and I said I'm going to do it, that's what I'm held to. And the line you guys went down was, we're getting really close to having this other duty, this fiduciary duty, where even if it's not in the contract, should you have noticed something and did you have an obligation to tell them about it, right? Is kind of the idea. And so you're starting to get into this area where you can have a very well-intentioned MSP who thinks they're doing the best and they're abiding by their contracts and they think they're following all the rules, but unbeknownst to them, and now I think your guys' point was it's not this way yet, but it could be going this way, is they could have an obligation to their client that they didn't even put on paper and that they didn't realize. So yeah, I think those things are so important and so critical. And I think a lot of people, because I run into this in the financial advisor business, financial advisors are great at being advisors, but they are accidental business owners, meaning like they run this little firm and they're a great financial advisor, but they've never run a business. They're in this by accident. Like they're the head of this firm now. And especially as they start to grow it and they get employees and now they have IT systems in there and they have all these extra things. They grew it from them just being a financial advisor so I was kind of equating it to the industry I'm in, and it's very similar. And I would love it if someone had a podcast like yours for the financial services industry, right? Because I think there's a lot of good stuff that comes with just overall business ownership and what it means in all different areas.
Yep, it's a big thing to have, and hopefully others will, join and do that for you. Maybe you can do it.
There you go. Well, I love your rebranding too, because that really does tell me. I'll admit I was in that crowd. I didn't know what Podnuts Pro, what you guys covered or anything like that. So when you rebranded was when I kind of like, oh, okay. IT business podcast. I love IT, even though it's not my day to day. And that was kind of an intro. I knew right what it was from the branding. So I love your branding switch. It's very clear, relevant. The homepage kind of tells exactly what it is, jumps right into it. Really easy to navigate. Actually, I listened directly on your website on my phone. It's easy to find the link, click through, and I was actually watching the YouTube video, but I know that the audio is right below it. So your branding and website was super slick, super easy to use.
Yep, that's another thing I wanted to work on, was making it so that people, can find the podcast, can listen, and we're on most of the podcatchers, not all, but most.
Yeah.
And making it to where if you go search, now I've still got to get through my Google authority and rankings back up there because they're all gone. But being able to search for either Uncle Marv or IT Business Podcast should get you there.
Yeah. Well, I've always taken that for granted, being with Jim, I forget that he does like teaching podcasts on the weekends on one of those podcasts, because it's all about, can I find it and can I listen to it in the format I want to in an easily accessible place? And so for you guys both kind of do it the same way. On your post, there's the video, there's the Spreaker audio or whatever audio, version underneath. It's in every single podcatcher. You can get it anywhere, right? Like it's where I want, how I want it. Sometimes I want to watch the video. Sometimes I'm in the car. I just want to listen to audio. Doesn't matter, right? You guys, but both the way you guys do it makes it easy to digest and to what's the word I'm looking for? To consume. Thank you. To consume. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yep. And that was a tip I learned from Jim and Dave. Have a website. When people ask you, where's your podcast? Well, if you go to Apple and you do the search, just itbusinesspodcast.com.
100%.
Marv, did you keep all the back episodes? So if someone was subscribed, did it just change over for them, or how'd that work?
Yes. So I did import. I think I got the last 100 episodes. I couldn't get all of them.
Yeah.
But they're still on the original Podnuts Pro site. So that is still up and running. So people will find it. And if you listen to the last 3 or 4 of those episodes, I'm telling you, you can find it here. So people can switch over, but
Good.
I've made it so I still have the podnutspro.com domain that redirects to IT Business Podcast. So hopefully if people go and click that link, they'll be redirected to the new link and go from there.
I noticed you kept. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I noticed you kept the numbering continuing on from the Podnuts Pro numbering. So this was
Yes.
episode 380 something. Was there any rationale behind that? I have my own theory of why you did it, but was there any rationale to it?
It was, again, the podcast, structurally didn't change. So I thought, you know what? Why make people think I'm starting over 100%? I still have the previous episodes there. So I just kept the numbers, and I don't know that numbers matter anyway.
It lends credibility, I'll say. Like when so for me, I wasn't a past listener, but when Jim was talking about you and rebranding, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds really cool. Went out and checked it out. Seeing the number be in the hundreds, I'm like, oh, this guy he knows his stuff. He's been around, he's done it. This is going to be credible. This is going to be a well-polished machine. Sure enough, it was. Whereas not that I would have not listened if it was episode number 1, but it affects things. I think even for sponsors and for people who want historic track record, those sort of things, if you're trying to monetize it and grow it, I liked it. I thought it was interesting. I expected to see episode number 1 back in January. I was like 380 something, that's interesting. And of course I had to scroll back, I'm like, okay, that's where Podnuts Pro left off, and
right,
it was interesting. Yeah, I like that decision. I think it was a good choice. Jim, when you've rebranded, have you kept the number? Have you reset your numbers? Like, because Home Gadget Geeks used to be
Home Tech.
Home Tech, thank you.
Yeah,
And
Home Tech.
Did you reset the numbers?
100 and some we changed.
No,
kept them the same. Kept them the same.
Okay.
So 525 goes all the way back. You can, I think that even the short numbering is HT in those days. So HT001 takes you back to the very first episode, if you want to go do that. But no, Marv and I spent a bunch of time talking about this rebranding and how you should go about doing it, and just some ideas. And so, Marv, I'm glad you got through it successfully. It looks like it worked. Everything is up and running. And are you getting any feedback from your audience? And what kind of feedback are you getting?
So I initially looked for feedback before I did it. I wanted to make sure, hey guys, I'm thinking about doing this. I had a core group of listeners that I had kind of taken under my wing. Anytime I wanted to do something big, I reached out to this group first. And of course, they were all like, oh yeah, sounds great, fantastic. They love the new direction. And then after I made the change, I even got more from other people that noticed it and said, oh, this is much better.
Good. Yeah, well, that's good. And then what are some topics coming up? Like, what do you have? What do you got on the docket? What are you hoping to cover here in future episodes?
Well, I mentioned an accountant. We have a lady in our industry that specializes in doing books for IT companies. So she's going to come on. It's probably going to be in a month or so, but we're going to have a few different shows on tips on how to set up your books, how to get through tax season, all of those types of things. So we're going to do some mini series with some of those people. Bradley Gross couldn't do it this year because he's doing so much traveling, but we're going to have, a legal series at some point down the road. We're going to have the money series with the accountants. Tomorrow, I'm actually doing a recording with a lady from a firm called Defendify, and that is a company that does cybersecurity training. So they help businesses and IT companies to educate employees, and they've got vulnerability testing that you can do for their website and their IP addresses on their firewalls. They will provide end user training, phishing attack simulations. They put out posters and videos for employees, and it tracks whether or not the employee actually watched the video, so that a office manager or HR person can go back and say, okay, you're not keeping up with your training and that sort of a thing. So those are the immediate shows we've got coming up. We're probably going to be doing once a month where we'll do a group meeting, and I'll have either 2 or 3 other techs, and we're just going to share stories. The show before this one was with the guy, Matt Rainey, who runs a company out in Louisiana. And we just shared stories. Hey, here's what is happening with our customers. He talked about 2 things that he's run across. Is one is people in Outlook keep hitting the archive button and somehow archiving mail. So we found a registry edit that blocks them from hitting that archive button. And he found, and this has been around for a while, but it's just something that if you don't do it, you don't know it. When people are getting some of these Windows 10 updates and the computer restarts, it's asking them to sign in with a Microsoft local account instead of a local account. So there's a group policy setting or a registry hack to block that. So we talked about things like that. And that's not necessarily business. That can be for anybody that doesn't want to.
Well, any small, medium-sized business that, I mean, these are struggles. You've got a smaller IT group. You've got, you might have hired an MSP to do all that work for you, right? Or to do most of it, to do the heavy lifting. And there's just so many changes happening very, very quickly. Ransomware has just become a huge issue, right? And where we kind of used to make fun of people who would get a virus or whatever, it's serious business now. And one of those kinds of things can wipe you out, right?
Yep.
I mean, right? So it's just not listen, when we had Melissa and some of those other viruses, 10 years ago, whatever they were. Well, ha 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 ha. I mean, yeah, some of them, but man, it's serious business today, right? Do you have to deal with that very much in what you're doing? Do you have some of your folks that have gotten ransomware or gotten?
Yeah, it's huge.
Don't mention any of them by name to protect the guilty.
Well, yeah. So luckily, I haven't had any recently, but I did have a law firm that got hit twice, and it was before ransomware really got big in the last 3 to 4 years. So it was kind of still new. And luckily, we had backups in a way that once we detected the ransomware, and even it was, I think one was 3 or 4 hours later before we realized what was going on. But we simply had them all logged off. We found the offending machine, cleaned it up, and were able to restore their files from the previous, 4 hours that were missing. So it wasn't horrible, but it's just getting bad to where it's unintentional. When it happens, people are doing it by accident, and that ransom people have gotten so smart in how they've crafted them. And so I have a lot of law firms that work in real estate, and the title companies are having a huge thing with people sending an email that looks legit saying, hey, when you send the next payment, can you make sure it goes to this account? And this bank, here's the bank information, here's all that. And I've got a couple of people that the other side has sent money to the wrong account. So it's getting quite hard to deal with.
Listen, I'm deleting legitimate emails because I'm like, that's not and it was legitimate, and just because I'm not trusting anything, I kind of, if I get things via email, it kind of goes back to the Podmatic thing. I think that probably came in and I thought they were warning me like, hey, your payment's coming up. And I was just clearing, email out, and I probably deleted it. So I've gone the opposite way where I have a problem. I get so much of it and I delete so much of it. I am sure I'm deleting legitimate emails in the process. So it's a real deal. We alluded to this in the beginning of the show, but Marv, from an IT business standpoint, do you get that sense that we're back? Like we're back, it's full speed, right? I mean, are you there yet, or do you think we're getting close?
Well, we're not full speed, but I think people are trying to be full speed, whether it's in a hybrid mode where some people are going to work remote permanently. But a lot of my companies are trying to mix and match. So they're trying to make, most of their staff come in the office, even if it's on a staggered schedule or alternating days. But they are trying to say, look, we gotta get cranking again. So that is ramping up now that the mask mandates are supposedly dropping everywhere, even though they're not. People are, going out and about in a much more aggressive way. So they're expecting things to be done and handled. And, by golly, if my computer's not working, I need you here to fix it, mask or no mask.
Yep.
Yeah, I just get this. I was in the office today, and we're still maybe 25% are coming in. So it's still pretty light. But I just get that feeling from a work perspective. And Mike, you contacted me the other day and you're like, dude, things are busy. I mean, this is for me, it just feels like it's 2019 again. And we are, because it was nuts, right? Right before the pandemic started. Are you getting, Mike? Are you getting that feeling? You sensing that too? Just
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, and I think a lot of companies who have been historically, waiting for people to come back. One person I was talking to, they said, okay, so companies are in this weird predicament where they don't allow work from home, and everyone's like, oh, well, there are companies around that do, so they leave for that. But then there's also too much away from the office, you kind of just lose that connection to employees a little bit, and then leaving's a lot easier for people. So jumping around, they don't have that deep connection to the people they work with and the culture. So yeah, it's interesting. We came back pretty early from ours, but then we actually, the past few months we went back to the mask mandate with Omaha, the way they did it. It's been interesting, but our IT department has been rock stars. They actually got the biggest round of applause at the last quarterly meeting, just because all through the pandemic and now they are just Johnny on the spot. Because when everyone went away, our company's a big, we say we're a technology company first, and even though we're in financial services, and we kind of lived up to that because we didn't really skip a beat going away. And it's because our IT department, even though they're small, they are just dynamite. They're responsive. You get a response to your ticket within a few minutes. And so they did a really, really good job. And I think with everyone coming back to the office, they've actually been relieved because it's a lot easier than having to remote in to everyone's different homes and everything like that. So they've, I think, enjoy having everyone back.
Tony says my wife's company decided that they didn't need an office, and I think this has happened to a few during the pandemic, and sold it. Everyone's 100% virtual. And, I think even though, I was in the office, it's 25%. Let's just say we have about 25 to 50%. We are busier than we've ever been. So people are figured out home or at work is irrelevant. The hybrid work, whatever we're doing, we're back to full speed, maybe more with hybrid, right? And so it's crazy. I mean, I remember how it felt in 2020 as it slowed down. I had to speed some things up to create more media for folks. And then we had a little lull, right? That fall of 2020 and spring of 2021 kind of felt reasonable for the first time in a long time, for me anyways. And then it's just been slowly cranking up. Marv, do you feel like in your own work, do you feel like, are you feeling that pickup in what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a pickup. Now, IT wise for me, it didn't change much. Most of what I do is remote. So that didn't affect me. What did affect me is what Mike alluded to earlier, having to support people in different places. Yeah. So employees on the go, working at home, and they decide, oh, this laptop isn't working, I need to switch over to this one. If you've got them set up with a secure VPN with, client-side software, you got to reinstall it on a new machine. So it got a little tricky there for a while. We've got customers that are trying to work remotely, but the principals of the office may not feel that they can be on top of their employees. So we've installed a lot more employee monitoring systems so that employers can look and see, okay, yeah, I saw that you logged in remotely, but are you actually working?
Yeah. Yeah. Productivity tracking, not employee monitoring. That's a little spooky, but productivity tracking, so it's the same thing, right? Sounds a little bit better.
And then the other part of that is, as companies are trying to ramp back up, some of them didn't do anything for a couple of years. So now they've got to play catch up.
Right.
And they want to, do the upgrades that they didn't do before. And it's tight. Inventory's not really there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, now, like I got issued a brand new laptop in February of 2020. So I came back from London. My current laptop wasn't working very well. They gave me a new one. In fact, it was so new when we were kind of sent home, that first time I tried to log in, it wouldn't log in, and I had to go in I had to physically go in masked up. And that was weird in those days, right? Because we were just starting to do it. They had to reset some things. So, but then you think, well, that laptop's now 2 years old. Like all of a sudden it's 2 years old. We had been on a 2-year cycle. I think they're going to go to 3 because of this, because of the supply chain issues. But even if I wanted a new laptop right now, I'm probably waiting 3 to 6 months maybe to get one, right?
I would suggest waiting because prices are up.
Right.
I've got a client that's trying to move into a new building, and they went through the whole lumber deal where prices were up 200, 300% for
Yeah.
that, and so they got hit with those things. My cable guy, went to go in and install new cabling for them, and he couldn't find cable, Cat 6 cable, for the
Right.
longest time.
Yeah.
And then
Really?
and then when he
Wow.
did, they used to be, I forget what the price he said was, but it was this price. And I actually found the Cat 6 cable for him online for like $150, a box. And I think that was double the price of what he quoted. So
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
trying to adjust for all of that as well.
Copper's a real deal. I was at Menards. This was a couple weeks ago now, but they have a big sign that says, "Guys, copper prices is 4 times what it was. Just be patient with us." And it was almost like the service manager for the electrical area had just gotten frustrated with people yelling at him about how expensive things were. And that all happened when I was doing wiring here. Now, fortunately, I didn't. I created a generator connect for the house so that I can hook my generator up on the outside and then run the power on the inside. Fortunately, I didn't have to run a ton of wiring for that, right? The components, the plugs, and even even like 12.2 or 14.2 wiring, even that's double what it was before. You go get a spool, double, triple the price. So it's I think, Marv, to your point, we're starting to think if we have companies now saying, okay, come back, it's not as easy as just coming back into the office because you've got old equipment. You may have equipment that hasn't been signed into in a year or two. That's
Yep.
that's fallen off the network, right?
Hasn't been signed into. It hasn't shown up on my dashboard for 400 days. People there's still Windows 7 machines out there because they had pushed back Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrade so long. So now they've got Windows 7 machines. I just went to go install Office 365, a new version on one of those. Couldn't install it.
No, it's gonna be weird because it's this weird 2-year window where like it's almost a bubble in itself where you're in it, and then there's like almost a time dilation field. You go back into the office and it doesn't feel like in some ways it's been 2 years because the 2 years was so different, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, but you know what? It's been 2 years.
And
That's
in computer
a long
years,
time.
it's a very long time in computer years.
Patches, updates, right? Some of those kinds of things. And even remembering in some cases, and I know you know this, in the small to medium-sized business space, you might have had a technician that was relying on knowledge of the way things worked in the building, like that never got documented or whatever. And that technician's net either gone, or even if they're still there, they're like, I honestly don't remember what we
because they didn't write it down. No documentation.
Yeah, and they're like,
Which-
how did I do this?
Yeah,
Like,
I
don't even
document
remember.
as much as possible. Actually, I've had 2 things in the last week where an office manager asked me if I had documentation on a Mac that was shipped back from their office to New York. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
why would I have that? But we did.
Oh,
And
really?
We had it because I was the one that picked it up and then had it taken to the UPS store. So we actually had that.
Yeah.
Good on
And then
another one,
keeping that.
Another one, we subcontract for a company, and they called me to say, hey, we need to go out and have the Comcast modem restarted because they're having wonky internet. Well, when I did, their entire network went down, and they thought the Comcast was just their backup, and they had AT&T Ethernet as their primary. And I said, well, no, you don't. And so the guy's like, oh, well, do you have our AT&T circuit information so we can put in a ticket? I'm like, why would I have your information? So,
no, I don't. I don't. Yeah, there's going to be some memory things. Stuff has been allowed to sit for a while, and with the turnover being so high. Brian says in the chat, he says, I do appreciate more of the natural hybrid approaches that have been happening. When companies go back to in person, it certainly isn't like it was before. 2020. And I think Mike Carson's done I think a really good job of this, of just making sure everybody has what they need right in that area, right?
For sure, I would, yes, 100%. Like, for example, yesterday, Emmett had been sick all night, so he stayed home, and I just worked from home. And like before, you had to like justify this, right? Like, sorry, I got to work from home. I will be working, all this stuff. And if you need me, it's just like no one asked. I just teamed someone so they knew, like, hey, I'm home today, kids home. Like, okay, cool. And then they pinged me as usual. It was just like any other day of work, right? And I love that. To Brian's point, companies understand now that it works. People are working. I'm not a fan of the productivity trackers. I don't know. That's just like, for me, I feel like managers need to have a better finger on the pulse if work is getting done, not done, if it's quality or not quality. And if it is getting done and if it's quality, I could care less how you did it and when you did it. I understand that things come up. If you took 4 hours in the middle of the day to go to a kid's soccer game, and then, you got your work done from 10 to 12, because that's when you're really productive at night, go for it. That's kind of my thing. And so as far as I know, I don't have any productivity tracking on my computer. But yeah, I agree with Brian. Completely natural now. And I think most companies are that way. If they're requiring people to come back, they're more understanding of the work from home needs.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. It's the new reality. And, just yesterday, my oldest came over. He just changed jobs. So he'd been working in a in a garage, at a place that fixes cars. He manages that. And then he changed to he's now working kind of, in a staffing company. And it was funny where he came over and he was logging into my network and then trying to get into his VPN. And this is the first time he'd been away from his network to get into the VPN. And then, so he's doing dual factor with his phone and it's not working. And so we're trying to get that and troubleshoot it. And it was interesting. And Marv, to your point from earlier, he's brand new to VPNs and he's brand new to this kind of space. And so, is I became his tech support there, helping him, just kind of like, hey, so have you thought about this? Maybe you need to take your phone off the network that it's on, because he attaches to my network when he gets over here on his phone. Maybe that's not good. Maybe take that off. And eventually we got him all set up and got him on his VPN. So, and I thought, Phil, this is good that you figured this out now, because now you can move around a little bit and be a little bit more flexible and know how to get all those things attached. But Marv, I mean, that's VPNs have, I am sure there have been some pretty big changes just in infrastructure and the way things work, and VPN companies getting their software. They're more relied on today than they ever have been, right?
They are. And the double-sided sword of that is people have now seen commercials, get your own personal VPN.
Yeah.
So people are buying their own and then having it conflict with the companies that they're trying to connect to, and trying to, educate people. Well, you can't use that VPN when you're using this VPN. Yeah. When you go to Starbucks, it's a hard technology to explain.
Yeah. Well, ironically, the average consumer probably needs a VPN their own VPN less than they've ever needed it before, because of a lot of security that's built into a lot of the stuff that they have. It's not a bad idea to have one, right?
Yeah, but that's not what they're getting from the commercials.
No, right. Right on. They're hearing all
it's on the TV.
danger,
it must be true.
They're here, and the VPN companies have gotten very savvy in that space, right? They are doing a nice job of promoting themselves in that.
Private internet access. I'll just say that PIA has just been, they're one of the first. They've stayed, they don't log. If anyone's looking for like a true, just secure VPN that has been tried and true since the beginning of time, PIA, private internet access, is a good one. They didn't get into this race, right? Like there's this race of advertising, getting people on free. PIA is not free, but it's not expensive either. But it's just they're not selling your stuff, and I like them.
I have actually just been using for the last 2 years the Bitdefender stuff. That I bought the Bitdefender box, and then the VPN's $30 a year or whatever. It's worked great when I need it. I can get it on any desktop. I can get it on my phone. It's worked out pretty well. I don't use it probably as much anymore, and just not as concerned anymore, but maybe I should. So, good reminder. Marv, anything? Well, let me say this, anything else, but congratulations on getting all of that. Listen, it's no small task to rebrand a podcast and to kind of keep it intact, to keep your listeners intact, to do all those things. So we do wish you the best of luck as folks come over. The reason I wanted to celebrate this with you is because I think my audience is a perfect audience for you. Like,
Very much
this
so.
is exactly, most of my listeners are IT business people. So if you haven't subscribed to it, head out, IT Business Podcast, super easy to remember, and it makes sense, itbusinesspodcast.com.
Yep.
But Marv,
And there was a couple of people that had put some comments in the chat about, networking and Active Directory and Open Directory. And those are the types of discussions that we have. And I'm trying to get more of, so that, it's not just about the big MSPs or the big IT companies. A lot of us, I started out, on my own. I walked out of my computer store and started working on the road. So I know the process, and, still here 25 years later, and hope to, keep on trekking. So that's what I'm trying to do, is give back to the community and help others. And I can still learn. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the last couple of years that I've gotten from listeners that have said, "Hey, have you thought about this?" Thank you very much.
Yeah. And guests. That's
And guest.
I've tried to quit Home Gadget Geeks. It's like a bad marriage. I've tried to quit this at least every 6 months. For Mike, you've heard me.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I go, I can't quit it because I just learned too much.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so helpful to me. And apparently it's helpful to you because you're still listening at this point, whether you're in your car or you're listening, you're live and you're listening, or however you're listening to us. You're still getting something out of it. So you hang around. I don't know, there's 400 or 500 of you that download this every week and listen to it. So it's working for me. But Marv, I'm glad you were able to make the jump. And I'd encourage everyone, one more time, itbusinesspodcast.com. Go out there, subscribe to it, give it 3 to 5 episodes, see if it's something that you can add into your rotation, figure out a way to listen to it. I know we're not driving as much anymore, so that gets a little bit harder, but get it in your rotation.
And if you don't like it after 3 to 5, check yourself and listen 3 to 5 more.
Check yourself.
I like it. Well, and we'll continue to have, because Marv's a gadget guy too, so we'll continue to have him back.
Well, I was going to say, before you kick me off,
I want you to stay. You're not going anywhere.
Okay.
I'm
all right.
I just was going to close this segment.
Had that podcaster sound, feel.
No, you're not going.
You're out of here.
Closing this segment. We were going to talk about something else, but go ahead. Before I was going to kick you off.
Well, because I was going to say, I've learned from you guys too. So I never thought that I would be listening to a gadget show. I'm just like, that's not me. I'm not putting up stuff in my house. My two big gadget things at the house are my TV and my Roku. But I've added some stuff. I've got Wi-Fi there. I've got a network there. I've got some other stuff. But we purchased a TV.
Oh.
And I remember you guys a few weeks ago having this TV conversation.
We did.
And so I did my research. I kind of went back and stuff, and I bought a Samsung Q70A 75-inch.
Is it the QLED?
QLED.
Oh man, you went with the Cadillac.
Wow. Well, and I really wasn't the one that pushed it. My wife pushed it because the TV we had before was only a 55.
Only. Yeah.
And she thought we needed to go 85. And I'm like,
woo,
dear, I don't think we need to go that big. I was 65 to 70 was where I was hoping to be. But we got a good price.
Yeah,
on it.
That's more than wife acceptance factor. That's like wife driving the purchase factor. That's pretty great.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with tech. She's just like, there's big TVs. Why don't we have the biggest?
Can she come talk to my wife, please? I think we need to get our wives together, because I think my wife needs to. My wife's like, oh no, like my phone works. I'm like, no, it's not big enough. Like, come on.
Marv, did you order a big box store? Did you
actually? So here's the thing. The funny thing is, we were at BJ's, and that's what kind of got us all on
BJ's?
this path.
BJ's is like a big box electronics.
It's Costco.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they had them, and they were cheap. And I said, well, we don't want cheap. And we started going through specs, and she's like, well, for $1,000 we can get this. And I'm like, okay, let's check ourselves. Let's, go through. So we went back and did some research, and I'm like, QLED is the one. I like Samsung's brand. It works with all the stuff. And so she's like, okay, so we got it. We ordered it. So it was a box store, but through Amazon.
Okay.
So it took a week to get here because it had to go freight.
Mm, yeah.
So we finally got it, hooked it up today.
Nice.
And my wife's like, ooh, that's big. And so I said, yes. So we got everything hooked up, turned it on. The sound is horrible.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Christian
Christian warned you of that when we talked about TVs. He said
Well,
you can't go with the speaker on the TV. They sound like they were dropped on the ground. Somebody poured water on them. They stomped on them, and then they installed them in the
Speakers
TV.
all about how much air you can move, and there's just not
Yeah.
a lot of air you can move in
No.
those super thin
Yeah.
new TVs.
Yeah.
So now tonight, after I finish here, I've got to go on the quest for a sound bar.
There you go.
Which we have a Bose, sound bar from 12 years ago. So it's the
Yeah.
Bose with the woofer, but you have to turn it on if you want to use it. So we're looking for one that automatically comes on with the TV. The Samsung models that they recommend, start at $429 and go up from there. So I'm like, maybe I'll ask the Gadget Geeks about a sound bar.
I would. It's another thing of you went all out on the TV. I would say either I would go out on sound. I actually think
Okay.
sound's even more important than the picture. People notice sound. Picture looks good and size is good, but I wouldn't skimp out.
Okay.
I do. We were going back to liability earlier, and I'm getting kind of worried about. I manage all the home networks for a lot of our executives at work, and so you go in and help them. And one of them is really big into home theater, and he actually, I had, Sonos. Some people love it, some people hate it. He has the Sonos. I think it's the Beam soundbar.
Mhm.
One of his TVs. It is hands down the best soundbar I've ever heard. If you're going soundbar route, it's fantastic. And the great part about what he did was he started with the soundbar, and then he added 2 wireless Sonos, just small speakers in the back. And so you can add on to it, right? Then it's not just that. And then he can add a woofer. So like he kind of grew his as he kind of figured out, because he had just moved into this house, what he wanted. So that was kind of the cool thing about Sonos, is you can kind of piece it all together. But I have made the mistake of going cheap on sound bars, and it was almost no better than the TV, right? It's like you can get a $150, $200 sound bar. It's going to sound like a $150 or $200 sound bar. So I don't know if you have that nice of a TV, I'd go big.
Okay. I was looking at another Bose. And
Bose are going to be fantastic.
They've got
I
the
love
Bose. There's a Bose TV soundbar. They're very basic. Is $279. I'm thinking, okay, maybe that may be one, but I don't. I'm going to have to either go somewhere and listen to them, or get some experienced people to say, nope, here's what you got to do. Because I've looked at Sonos before. You're right. There's that. There's that love-hate thing.
There is,
with
yeah.
them. With Bose, it's
They're
usually
expensive
they're
for
too
what you
expensive,
get.
right?
Yeah, I think Bose is good quality to sound, performance wise. I think they do really well. So you were saying the big issue with your current one is that they don't turn on at the same time,
Right, and that's the whole thing. I mean, it's not that it's a big deal, but it also, I think that the older technology doesn't match up well with the TVs. So, for instance, when we turned ours on, we got that booming sound, but it still didn't sound great. If that
How are
makes
they
sense.
connected? Are you connected via HDMI or optical or?
Well, optical.
Okay. Does it have HDMI in on your soundbar? Is
Well,
that an
that's
input option?
those aren't a sound bar. So the Bose that we
those
got
ones?
were the 2 separate speakers
Oh, okay.
and the woofer, and there's
Okay.
just a controller module. So
Does the controller have HDMI or is it just optical?
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. I've never.
Okay.
We've always had it hooked up with the
Because
optical.
there's, I'm gonna mess up the name. I think it's C-Arc or it's ARC, right? There's an audio return channel that can go down, and then whatever. There's another standard that controls the sound bar from the TV. So when you power on the TV, if the TV is sending volume up and volume down commands, it's sending it through the HDMI cable down, and all those connect. So I know that's been a lot of people use HDMI compared to optical because you can send data back. So that would solve your issue of turning it on and off and volume up, volume down, and all of that just going to the TV.
Okay, we saw that, and I just assumed that was a fairly recent technology because I never heard that term. Again, my previous TV's from 2010.
Okay. No, yeah, it's been around for a while, I would say. I think that technology's been pretty. I mean, I think I got my sound bar, which does all of that. It's a Samsung sound bar. It's one of the cheaper ones, but not too cheap. I got that maybe 7 years ago, and it has all of that in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marv, go back 524, which was 2 weeks ago with Christian. You know, we had him on talking about his home theater setup. Once he gets past the TV selection, I think we spent a bunch of time talking about sound.
That's probably about the time I tuned out. So.
Might have been. Well, you did the right thing. You listened to the TV part.
Right.
So now go back and listen for that. You know, it's probably 20 minutes in. I'm going to say maybe 25. Go in and find where we start talking about his AVR, right?
Okay.
That's kind of the sound setup. And there'll be some things, listen, there's some things in there I didn't understand, but work your way through them. It'll make more sense as you get it. Look up some things on Amazon, kind of go through those pieces. But to Mike's point, that's right. You're going to kind of want it HDMI controlled at this point going, because you always think like, why would I hook up HDMI through my, like the
audio?
The video's not going. Well, no. It's for the audio.
Yeah.
Like that's,
and for the commands that go back and forth.
Right. The sound, that's, yeah.
If you don't want to go that route too, on my other TVs, so I'm an NVIDIA Shield user, love the Shield, but I think a lot of the devices out there do this now where your remote for whatever box you're using can also control every single device. So my NVIDIA Shield remote, it sends the IR blast to the TV to turn that on, and it sends an IR blast to my soundbar to turn that on. When I turn volume up and volume down, it IRs to the soundbar. Like, though it just that one remote. And it's just smart. Like, and I think Apple TV does the same thing. I'm not sure on Roku. I think Roku does, but I think you can only have a TV and then it controls the Roku. I don't know if it can do both. So something else to think about.
Well, what's weird is this Samsung controller has controlled everything so far.
The remote, their remotes are pretty good. Yeah.
So it came up and it went through the setup really quick, and it's like, okay, we found these devices. Do you want to use them all? Yeah. I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't turn on and off your soundbar, huh?
Well, no. And I'm thinking that's because one, either I didn't have it on when we were going through the setup, or two, it's too old.
Yeah, it could be it
with that technology.
It's possible. Yeah. Or you just don't have the right connectivity.
Right.
To it. It's not.
I'll check and see if it's got the HDMI thing in it.
Yeah. Or on that remote, you can even go in and add a sound device, and you can, like, if it says I don't find one, do you want to add it manually? Say yes, and then because a lot of times it's checking for HDMI. Hey, is there something on HDMI that I can control? And if your device is too old or not connected by HDMI, it might still offer you the availability to do the IR code. You know, the old school. Like if you got an old school universal remote where you have to plug in the IR
the numbers. Yeah.
So it'll do that. That's what the NVIDIA Shield does, because it doesn't see my sound bar at all. But I just tell it I have one. He's like, oh, what brand? And did the volume go up now? Did the volume go up now? And I say, yes. Okay, we have the code for it. Here you go. And it works.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you. This is the best day ever. Like we did a podcast and then on TVs, and then you bought a TV. That is so great.
I'm telling you though, if you 75 is big.
Yeah,
that's really big.
That is big.
Yeah. That is big.
But the picture,
that's redesigned the whole living room big.
How far are you from the TV?
We can't get far enough back. I think we're that space is only, I think it's 22 feet.
Okay. It's essentially VR goggles now. Yeah. Like it's like wearing a set. VR
it's like, okay, what happened on this side? I get
there's calculus involved.
You watch that side, I'll watch this side. You know, you tell me if they score over there, and I'll tell you if they score over here.
Picture in picture, it's like a whole, like it's just a TV. It's like a regular TV. The picture in picture. Right. Yeah. Well, you've got some. Like I said, go back and listen to the back half of that episode, and Christian talks a little bit about sound and then lighting. Like. Now you don't have to do lighting right away, but just you're gonna have to kind of think about like, what do I want to do? Christian talks a little bit about the mood lighting and some of those.
So there was this thing called ambient mode,
and
I'm like, oh, I ain't doing that. because that looked like it would do all of that mood changing based on your. I'm like, oh, that's too much.
Yeah, based on what
That's
you're
too much.
watching. And then the other thing you want to think about is, do you need backlighting to the TV? I mean, this thing is so big, you might want to put some backlighting behind it that comes on either when the TV's off because it looks cool, or it might be helpful to have some of that lighting on while you're watching it from a visualization perspective. So,
well, first we have to figure out. Yeah, we've got a bunch of
time.
stuff. So it's still sitting on our console, on our credenza, because it came with the feet.
Yep.
We've got a big white empty wall behind it that we can mount it.
Yeah.
So the wife's like, should we mount it? I'm like, I don't know. So we've got to think about all that. And then, of course, if you mount it, you've got to do the thing with the cables coming down.
Yep.
The lights.
One thing at a time, my friend. One thing at a time. Just tackle, enjoy it. You'll want to calibrate it at some point as well. We talk about that towards the end of the show. You'll want to get it calibrated so you're getting all the right colors that are in there. But it's a whole new, you've entered in a whole new world of goodness and love and acceptance. So
like the same advice you gave me, Jim, when I upgrade all the components in my Unraid box. I had all this power now. You're like, just enjoy it. I was trying to add all this stuff. You're like, just enjoy it for a bit. If you let it be a project, don't rush.
Watch some of your favorite. Watch some of your favorite shows that you because that's big. Like that is really huge. You're gonna really enjoy it. So good. You did a good job on that one, Marv. Good work. And now you're gonna listen. Now you're gonna have some. We'll have to have you back in a couple months as you've worked through all these gadget decisions that you're going to have to make with this thing.
Well, yeah, right? I got $1,000 in accessories to buy now.
you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. It's just not the TV anymore. Like it's not, it's like, I bought a TV and now I'm done. No, I got speakers and lighting and, all those remotes.
Well, the saving grace is I have time because we just spent $3,000 on a fridge. So,
did you get a smart one or just a regular? Does it?
Do you want to hear the story?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. What'd you get?
So when we bought our house and we walked around and did everything, we got into the kitchen and the fridge was tall. And we thought, holy cow, we have a huge fridge. And it was a GE monogram. So it was a counter depth fridge. But when you open it up, it's almost a normal fridge. The top 12 inches were just all motor.
Oh, okay.
But it was built. It was one of those built-in fridges. So the cabinets were custom built around it. And we thought, well, we'll get it checked out at some point. And so now here we are in year 8 of the home, and it just decides to die. And it died late on a Thursday. And we have people coming to visit for the weekends. We got to get a fridge.
Yeah. Do you have a backup fridge at all, or is it this the only fridge in the house?
Well, we have a fridge in the garage, but it was full.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and what's funny is we have a fridge here at the office, so we're carting stuff from the house to the office.
Right.
So in the meantime, I get on to try to find a repair tech, and I call GE first and tell them what the fridge is, and they're like, "Oh, well, that has to be a certified GE tech. We can't just send a regular tech." So this was Thursday night. We won't have a tech available till Wednesday. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, are there any other local companies that that you can recommend? And so she found 2. We called them, and both of them were like, yeah, we don't work on GE anymore, and we certainly don't work on the GE monograms.
So apparently you're not the first person who's called about this.
Yeah. So then it's like, okay, we just gotta, if we want a fridge, we gotta go get one. So I start looking around to see what's available. You can't find any of those fridges in a local store.
No.
They're all custom ordered.
Yep.
We found a Lowe's that actually had several in the store.
Really?
So we drove to Lowe's and looked around, and we found one that we liked, and it was good. It was Bosch. But all the fridges that are counter depth and tall, like 72 inches tall, they're all expensive. So we get that. And then so $3,000.
Oh yeah,
on a fridge.
Yeah. Is this go back to my original question? Is it a smart fridge? Did you get
it's not? It's just your basic big fridge. It had it had a water line, but we don't have a water line in our house, and
Sure.
so we didn't hook that
Right.
up.
Right.
And she didn't, oh, well, we had to go through it. She didn't want a side by side,
Right.
So we had to get the double doors with the the freezer on the bottom.
Yep.
And we got stainless steel and such, certain things. But it is smart in the sense where it's got a bunch of internal controls. It actually has temperature controls on the trays for the produce.
Oh, nice.
And all
Oh,
of
that's
that.
cool.
So you can set
That's
all of
nice.
that. You can
Yeah.
set it for fruit or vegetables
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
It's got other temperatures. It's got the alarm. It's got a bunch of gadgets that I haven't looked at yet.
Yeah. Nice.
So
well, you
it was
spent
nice.
some money lately.
Yeah, this was just not a good.
you just the money's just flowing out of there.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is because I just saw this new fridge where they've put weight sensors on the bottom of the fridge, so the feet are also weight sensors now. And so there's a camera or there's something on top of the fridge, and when you pull an item out, it recognizes what item you've pulled out, and then so you pull out the milk, and because we've always wondered, like, how does it know when you've run out of milk? Like, right? Well, it weighs it. So it knows its weight when you pull it out. It senses that. It says, oh, that's the milk. You pour the milk, you put it back in. It does the diff and then goes, you have this much milk left or whatever that's on there. And so, it was just one of those like, oh, we're getting, because this was gimmicky when it first started. But I think now we're getting pretty close to that weird Amazon awareness. You go to an Amazon store and you can just take stuff off the shelf and walk out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that technology is making its way into the fridges, and with the weight kind of creepy stuff, like there's some, this may actually work. I was skeptical when they first came out with these fridges, but I think now the smart fridges may actually work, and then be able to build your shopping list for you, basically like, hey, you're going to need these things. In my case, and in yours too, we actually need that technology in all of our fridges, because if you have it in one and you have a second fridge that you're keeping extra stuff in, you want to know that stuff is there, right? You need to. So that gets really expensive, and I think that was like a $5,000. That one I was looking at was like a $5,000 fridge.
Yeah, I did want to get that smart. I don't want people knowing what I
can be dumb. I can be dumb for a while.
Yeah.
So So it was asked in the chat, what seems to be the most reliable brands? It's funny. So when I did my research, now I had to start, let me go back. So this wasn't the first big appliance purchase. We had to do a dishwasher about 6 months ago. And I ended up going with Bosch. And Bosch right now seems to be consistently at the top. So if there's a top 5 list, 3 of the top 5 are Bosch. And we wanted quiet when it came to dishwashing. Bosch was the quietest. And so that's what we went with, because I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, you know what? I don't need cheap. I want it to last. And if I've got to spend extra money so that it lasts, let's do that. Yeah. So that's what we did. And we did the same with the fridge. And we looked at all the other ones out there. We looked at, we did look at GE because that's what we were used to. We looked at Whirlpool and we looked at some of the others, but the reviews just weren't that good. And Brian also said he usually looks at Consumer Reports. I used to use Consumer Reports religiously. But, then they got to the point where I'm like, I don't need to buy it. The reviews were getting shorter and shorter. And I'm like, I can go on Amazon or some of these other places and get just as good a reviews from real users, kind of like with computers. We want people that really use this stuff to tell us what they're like. So we, again, went with Bosch. That particular model, if I don't know it right off the top of my head, but it had, 4.8 stars above all the others. So
yeah, they make pretty good tools. They've come on in the tool space recently, and they're making pretty good tools.
Yeah, they do good work.
Folks love DeWalt and some of those other Milwaukee and some of those other brands, but I just picked up a
you mean Ryobi's not in your top?
Listen, depends. Like I bought a Black & Decker drill for $20 at Ace Hardware. That was just one of those deals. That thing has just been a champ. Like, and that's, Black & Decker's definitely the bottom of the food chain for these kinds of things. But for what I use it for and how often I use it, For $20, good enough, right?
The
It's not
funny
like
part
business.
about tools is you got to be very careful but you got to do all your research for the very first tool you buy nowadays
Yeah.
because of battery
right.
compatibility.
Right on. No,
Right,
on.
because you're not going to mix. You're not
Right
going to get a
on.
Milwaukee. No, I don't mind the DeWalt. I'm not going to get Craftsman because they're on sale. No, I started with DeWalt and now I have to stick with DeWalt because those batteries are expensive and it better work for all of my devices.
Ecosystem, and they've gotten really expensive on the batteries.
Like insanely expensive. Yeah, they did a good job of building that ecosystem out. So
it's shaving handles, and you're buying the blades,
and you're paying for the razors 100%. Yeah, we're in the market too. We're trying to get all new appliances. We've been saying that for a year. But yeah, Bosch has been at the top of our list. Maytag, Whirlpool are kind of some of our favorites. I've seen, if they haven't a TV brand, they haven't been good. Samsung, LG, those ones I haven't been as impressed with. And I've had friends who have had them, and just they're great at first and they're really good and they have a lot of features, but the lasting part is what's been going on.
Really? Samsung's been my go-to.
Really?
Yeah.
You like them?
We
for appliances?
Oh, not appliances. No.
No.
I'm
saying if you're looking at a tea or a fridge, and that brand also has TVs, usually their fridges aren't that great. No, Samsung on the TVs, I think they are some of the best out there right now.
Yeah. If when I see a Samsung in another appliance, I'm like, no, that's not what they're good at.
That's exactly my point. That's a much better way to say what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Soar with your strengths, my friend.
Stick with your strengths. LG, Samsung, stay with what you're good at.
Well, we did buy a Samsung range, and it's been pretty good. I mean, I did buy the extended warranty on it, but just cause, right? It's one of those kinds of things. But yeah, it's been pretty good. It's it's a flat top. I forget, glass flat top kind of thing. For the last 2 years, we've cooked on it just about every night. I mean, we use the heck out of that thing. So
that's good to know.
Yeah, it's it's hit or miss, but I love your tip on Bosch. They seem to be doing more in that space. Hopefully, sometimes those companies come out with some really good quality and then they get greedy and then they start producing really bad stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, I love this brand, and then it's awful. So hopefully they'll stick.
Well, usually what happens is they follow that BMW model where, in the beginning they're good and they're expensive and people know it, but then it's like, well, we want to appeal to the masses, so let's water it down just enough, and then you got to water it down too much, and now BMW just doesn't have the same cachet that it did in years past.
You're buying a lousy car and it's super expensive to fix, and you're like, okay, this model doesn't work. I don't want to be doing this. So, speaking of models, Mike, Ed was asking me the other day, he wanted an update on your truck. So what's going on with your F-150?
Yeah. So no, not an F-150. Oh, that's blasphemy, Jim. It's not an F-150.
What is it?
It's a Chevy. It's a Silverado.
What?
Yeah.
When did this change?
I know. So I'll make this short and sweet. So I think I'm going to disappoint a lot of people because I've been so excited. We've talked about it for a year. I've had a reservation on the F-150 Lightning. Long story short, the Jeep had another issue come up with it. And it was one of those. So I had that Jeep for 13, 14 years, 200,000 miles on it. And there was just, it was just having to have constant issues. And, it came down to the F-150 Lightning. There was just no answers to when my order was going to get called. It could be next week. It could be 2 years from now. And there was no way to know. And so, I was like, before I put another chunk of money down to fix this Jeep, like, I did a lot more research, and I just kind of started to look. And it's funny. So everything I loved about the Lightning, just total, if I'm going to go for it, all the tech, future, all electric, like I was devoted. I went the polar opposite. So I gave up on the Lightning. I said, you know what? The Lightning is something like an all electric truck. I can always trade whatever I get in now for that in the future, get a few years down the road. One of my buddies had been hounding me. He's like, dude, Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Minnesota, where you're doing your driving to visit stuff, we don't have the electrical grid built out yet for this. Like, you're going to hate yourself because because I know you. He goes, you go to the farm and then you randomly decide you're going to go to Kansas City from the farm and you go up, like all of that driving, like go look at a map on where all the plugs are. It's just not ready here. And he was right. So to a very long story short, I said, okay, if we're not going to do the full tech, I want the longest lasting truck Because if I drove my Jeep for that long, I want this truck to be the first truck that my kids drive. And my oldest son is 5. So we have 11 years until he drives. So I was like, this truck is going to be what he drives. So I said the least amount of tech as possible. I want most featured. I want off-road. I want rugged. I want the least amount of tech. So what I decided on was a 2022 Chevy Silverado 1500 Trail Boss. Which has it has a factory lift on it, very capable off-road. I got it in all black, which is kind of my favorite, that sleek all black Chevy look. You're just shaking your head, Jim. Are you so disappointed?
It burns fossil fuels. I'm disappointed.
Oh,
with you.
and it burns a lot. It's really painful to go to the gas station. I mean, this thing is like, I think I average like 13 or 14 miles per gallon. It's but
and gas, of course, is getting cheaper every day.
Oh yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I don't cry every time I go to the gas station or anything.
I mean, we do live in an ethanol state, so it's not as bad.
No, it's not.
It's not as bad. I mean, Marv, what are you guys paying for gas right now?
So I went to BJ's and paid $3.39, but the regular prices are up to $3.89.
Okay. Yeah. So you're about 20 or 30 cents more than we are. $3.50 was kind of what I was seeing today for us. So typically nationwide, we're some of the cheapest gas in the US is in the Midwest here. So Mike, but like this is a big shock, man. Like you were all in, and much like I was on the Cybertruck.
Yeah. That's kind of how
when'd you pick it up? When'd you pick it up?
So I picked it up February 4th. So it was hard to find. So the way Chevy is right now, so I got a 2022, but it's called a 2022 Limited, meaning this is a lot of the new stuff, but not the interior upgrades that they made to the 2022 that are coming out. Those Chevy Silverados actually haven't even come out yet. Those are going to come out in the summer. So went with the 2022 Limited, which actually isn't bad because the cost was a lot lower because they haven't upgraded all the interior. But the model I went with, I went with the things that were really important to me. Like, so it has Apple CarPlay, nice. It has a decent sized screen. And what's interesting is the chip shortage did affect these. And this is how Chevy handled it. I thought this was interesting. So I got in and we were doing the test drive and I went to hit the heated seats button for Hannah because she really likes those. And he's like, oh, that's not in yet. Even though the button's there, the heated seats, the chip isn't in. And he said, so he was actually, this is right when I got it. He's like, so there's two things here, the heated seats and the steering wheel heated, the chip shortage. So what they're going to do is we give you a discount on the front end. And then, so first of all, you're saving money. And then also we're doing a quote unquote recall in the summertime when those chips come in. You bring it in, we install the chip, and then your heated seats work.
That's crazy.
But I thought that was interesting. I kind of liked that though, where they're just like, hey, we know things that I don't really care about, and then a full recall, and I saved money.
Well, why would they want to let that thing sit somewhere for 6 months? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. For heating chips.
Heating chips.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this thing, it doesn't have lane departure, doesn't have any of that. Like it's a true.
That is, I don't know, Mike. I'm so dependent on that. It's so great.
Well, see, coming from where I was coming from, everything in here is already an upgrade, so I didn't really notice it.
No, right on.
And it was again one of these things of like the simpler the better. You know, because a good truck can run forever. Yeah. And so I'm like, the less things that can break, the better. Yeah. Not to get too down a rabbit hole, but for you truck fans out there, everyone knows that the 2019 to 21 Chevy Silverados had an issue with their dynamic fuel system, their DFS system. So first of all, it was annoying to people because the trucks had that auto stop where you stop at a light and the engine shuts off.
I hate that thing.
And most people hate it. But the worst part was that the way that the engine was built, the system that would turn those on and off would break. They didn't make it strong enough, and it would seize the entire engine up.
Yeah.
Well, they got rid of that. They X'd which is good and bad. That means that I'm using all 8 cylinders all the time. That's why I chug through gas, because it doesn't shut off certain cylinders anymore when I'm going down the road. But yeah, that's what I went with. It is my new baby. Like Hannah makes fun of me because sometimes I go out and I just open the garage door and just look at it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty truck. It's kind of what. Yeah. That all black.
Nice.
I just go sit in it. So I'm big fan on the truck. But yeah, I know I'm going to disappoint some people because I went with less tech. But hey, Apple CarPlay, I'm just getting used to that. That's amazing.
It's pretty great.
These are the simple things that I was missing in life that I didn't know I wanted. But now that I have, they're great.
Marv, you don't have to go out and buy a new car. Okay. Just because we talked about it tonight. You don't-
Well, so that was part of the conversation. So I've got a 2012 Jeep, and it's getting close to wife's like getting a new car soon.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna try to squeak another couple of years out of this one.
Yeah.
That's the way I was for the longest
Yeah.
time. Like, I'm keeping this Jeep running.
Dude,
It's
you
just-
milked
yeah.
that thing for a long time.
I
Like
did.
you've had
Yeah.
as long as I've known you, and it was old when we first started podcasting.
I got it when I was a
mean,
senior in high school.
I know.
So I've had the same car from high school, through
Well-
college, through law school. It's my first 2 jobs. Yeah, it's been my friend.
That's awesome. Well, good for you. Congratulations on the new 2022 Silverado.
Thanks.
That's pretty great. You're gonna love it. I mean, it's so nice getting a new car, and you know the Subaru, my Legacy, still only has 6,000 miles on it. Like,
How long have you had it?
I bought it in May, so
Wow.
like yeah.
I've got 1,600 already on mine, and it came with 12. So we have been driving the crud. We take it down to the farm because I love to rip through the fields with this thing.
No,
My
right on.
father-in-law was making fun of me because I'm like, dude, I got 0 to 60 through your back cornfield, and he just laughed. I'm like, hey, I didn't have a truck when I was a kid. I didn't get to do all the stupid stuff when I was young, so I'm making up for it now as an adult. I'm getting to do all the fun,
right on.
Fun with the truck things you do.
No, right on. I mean, it's just super fun. Listen, I have to change my oil now more for time than I do for distance. It's like, it's 6 months. I should probably change the oil. So now you're going to love it. It's super great. And it's just kind of nice to get that. In your case, it was starting to break down probably more than you wanted it to.
It was,
right? And that at that point that becomes, I bought that Legacy to replace the Honda, but the Honda's been sitting. Sammy has really no need to drive it at this point. So I've been driving it every other day. So I kind of switch between the hybrid on one day and the Legacy on another. And it's okay. I've got the Honda all wired up it's got Amazon CarPlay in it. And so it can do exactly the same. It doesn't have the Apple CarPlay, but it can do almost everything I need it to do comes out of the Legacy with CarPlay, with Apple CarPlay. So I've just been rotating cars.
And if it's not spewing fluid everywhere, my Jeep, I had to refill my transmission fluid every 3 to 4 days because it was you'd put it in and then I had this big red spot on my garage floor from that transmission fluid, and it was just getting that.
Did you trade it in? They give you anything for it?
They did. They actually gave me more than I thought they would.
It's crazy right now. It's crazy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
And with Hannah, like they're like, okay, do either of you work in the health system? I'm like, well, she does. He's like, oh, do you mind her being the primary on the account? I'm like, no. And so she jokes me now. My wife's like, this is my truck, not your truck. Who's the primary on it? Who got us the big discount and who got more on trade in for being in the medical system? So yeah, they were doing a pretty good deal on it. Just a quick funny story. I actually blew the tire out during the test drive. We don't know what we hit. We didn't even know we hit anything. We thought it was a rock. We pull back in and also we hear shh, and the truck started to like sink like this. And he's like, oh, let me get this thing back to service before we're riding on rims. And he whips it around and he comes back and he's like, well, now you're buying it. And I'm like, well, okay. He was joking. He's like, no, we'll get a new tire on it if you really want.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, the couple, Tony says his friend bought a Highlander and a remote start from the fob as a fee. The remote start on my Legacy in the app is a fee. Yeah.
The app's a fee, but from the key fob, that's surprising. I'm loving the app. I've been traveling a lot again, and I'll get off the plane and start the truck from the app. Like I'll be deboarding. I'll just start that car. It's nice and warm by the time I get to the garage. I'm getting used to that.
Marv, you don't see these kinds of temps. I mean, to you, like 45 is cold, but we've been seeing that polar vortex came through and it was like 0 with -20 wind chills.
Yeah, it's cold.
Super nice to have that. You don't have a remote start because you have an older car, so you don't. You definitely.
No, I do actually. I have it on my fob. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, my Jeep was loaded, so I got the remote start on the fob, and
pretty handy. You don't.
It's nice.
You live in Florida. You don't.
Well, it's just cool to go.
It is kind of cool.
They do it to cool it down, not to heat it up.
Yeah,
right?
That would be true.
Start the AC.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Is it a Wrangler?
No, it's a Grand Cherokee.
Oh, nice. I love the Grand Cherokees. I had an old 93 Cherokee that I drove in high school. It was my dad's old one. I loved that Jeep more than anything in the world. I was so sad. We actually donated it to the summer camp I worked at. That thing is still running, doing camp duty, driving up and down outside, hauling stuff. I love the owner of the camp will send me pictures every once in a while. Like, your Jeep's still going strong. So I love it.
Well, a couple great comments to get us all out of here. Joe says, Mike, I'm only sending you crappy beer. Which
is that because I went Chevy? Are you a Ford guy, Joe?
You only drink crappy beer anyway.
That's true. I'm gonna really enjoy this. I'm not complaining. Just make sure it's Busch Light.
That's perfect.
Busch and Chevy go great together.
And then Brian said a lot of dinosaurs had to die to help get Mike from place to place. So,
yeah, I'm not a gleaning example of how to save the environment. We'll just
Ed's gonna cry a little bit. I'm not gonna.
Was he excited about the lightning?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's a Tesla guy,
yeah,
and so he's a big fan of that.
Before my show last night with the attorney, he just bought a Tesla, and he said today was all about trying to get the electric set up in the house for his Tesla, and he said that was the biggest pain.
Yeah, you got to get an electrician out, and they got to install some things, and you got to get the right plugs. And Ed just changed out his plug, and he was able to just purchase the new cable, and it just plugged right in. So he was in good shape. But you have to consider the amperage. If you're in an older home and you have if you got older service, you're probably gonna have to upgrade your.
Well, and in Florida, we don't have most of us don't have power in the garage.
Right.
So you have to run something. You're right. The older Florida homes, they had 100 amp boxes.
Mm-hmm. So, and if you're putting a 50 amp service, in some cases you can put up to 60. Well, you're upgrading your service for sure at that point.
Well, and that was another reason, to be totally honest. We started to look at the cost. I could, after installation of all the electrical in the home and everything, and getting the F-150 Lightning that I wanted, I can get 2 of the trucks I just got. My truck's brand new, 12 miles on it when I bought it, and it's the LT model, so it's not even the cut. It's a decent trim level too, and I can get 2 of these for the total cost it was for the investment of the F-150 Lightning. So I was like, that's another reason. I'm like, I don't know if I like it that much. I don't know if I'm that excited.
Mike, there's some Tesla owners though. I mean, you think of Paul and John and Ed that are, they're going to be disappointed. They were disappointed when I went with a gas vehicle.
I know.
So, Marv, if you had a choice between, if you were buying, say you're thinking about it, you're hoping you get a couple more years. Do you think you'll go EV, or do you think you'll go back?
I'll go hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go hybrid. I do want there to one for, power, just something about gas power, and the ability to know that if I got to make a trek, I don't want to have to go searching for charging stations.
Yeah.
I'm in that same boat. I almost went, when I decided that I wasn't going to go with the F-150 Lightning, I really was swayed towards the Ford Power Boost, because that Power Boost is a hybrid engine and it gets like 28 to 30 miles per gallon, but you don't have to charge it up, but it runs, it switches between the battery and the engine. You get almost a full, generator, quote unquote, on board. You get a full power panel in the back. I was like, that's a good combination. Like if Chevy had a Trail Boss that had some sort of hybrid in it, I would have really considered it. This one's a 5.3 V8, which is just fun because it's a lot of power and it's loud and fun. But the hybrid, I think, is a good way to go.
Mike, we are seeing, OPPD, our power company, is trying to be more EV friendly, and they have been installing charging stations around the city of Omaha.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So like on early this month, or last month, I guess it is now, they put 6 new chargers down in La Vista that are open to the public. Right. And so they're trying to be more EV friendly with that. They actually have a program which is kind of interesting. You can buy shares of their solar farm, and that share, then for every share you buy each month, it'll give you a rebate on your electrical bill. And so you can, like, the more shares you buy, of course, the larger the rebate. So you start thinking, like, I bought $100 share in it, and now that's getting me $1.61 every single month. And you kind of go, well, that's not very much. Well, but the solar payoff's a 10-year payoff today anyways. So it kind of gives me a
do
way
it without installing it.
Yeah. Like I can buy shares in it and get like, and it's way more this year because they're getting more in it. They're getting more efficient. That rebate's getting more. I started thinking like, I don't know, maybe I need to buy more shares in this. And you don't have to worry, like those panels don't get, like if you put them on your house, they've got a life expectancy and you're replacing them again.
You got to clean them,
they crack.
And it's not like you're going to be switching power companies. Not an option. You're going to be with OPPD as long as you're in Omaha, right?
I thought that was kind of smart. Let me buy into shares of this, and then I'll get a rebate on my. So
the power company's got to be loving all of this, right? Because now they're getting what the gas, companies were getting previously. Like, oh, sweet, yeah, pay us to fill up your car, right? Instead, so they're probably loving it.
Oh, for sure. But
FPL down here in Florida, they've basically cornered the market on solar power. They made it, even though they claim to have this, discount program where you can get free solars. It's not really truly free. But yet we were driving and they have solar farms all over the state.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's becoming, I think that's, to be honest, I mean, I love this idea of residential doing your own power thing. I mean, it's great if you could actually do it. I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. Collective farms where the maintenance is the same and it's just not efficient for everybody to have their own solar panels, right? It just doesn't, like, you don't have optimal conditions. You have to change them all the time with the sun. Why would you not just put in solar farms where all that stuff's managed centrally and then buy shares into it?
Yep.
That seems to make more sense to me. So
self-sufficiency, not relying on the grid.
Yeah. Well, no, that's true.
Right. Like that's why I would do it. Because I'm like,
right.
When the grid shuts down, the power still goes out, and then you would still have power out. But if I got a power wall with solar.
This is what's great about OPPD, our power, is they're really forward thinking. So they built a whole cold storage facility for natural gas when natural gas was cheap. And then they just packed it in. They're like, okay,
I don't know.
we're gonna hedge the price on this thing. And they're doing all these alternative. It's just not one thing, right? They're doing all these alternative solutions for it, and they're just being kind of smart about it. And you kind of think, like, they're trying to figure out ways how to store this too. Like, how can we generate electrical energy that may not all get used, and we could store it? How could the city have a battery? Like, they're thinking about that, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, you're pretty cool. So I think we have one of the most forward-thinking power companies here in the United States with OPPD. They do a nice job. So, Marv, thanks for coming out tonight. Now I will kick you off. No, not really. Stay around for a few minutes if you can. Thanks for coming out tonight. Congratulations on getting
for having me.
Your podcast cut over. Mike, congratulations on your new. Can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but your new Chevy Silverado.
Yeah. Yep.
Like a rock. Like a rock.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're running those commercials anymore.
Those were good old commercials. Like a rock.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, America.
Yeah. That's what I feel every time I turn that engine on. I was like, whoa. Oh my God.
Oh, it's got. I might have gone Dodge. If I was going to do anything, I might have gone Dodge. But
Dodge has really good insides. Their interiors are great.
Well, their engines are great too.
Yeah.
Right, if you get at me. So we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern. Love to have you come out here and join us. We're getting a little long. If you've made it this far, send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. I'll send you. I'll have some kind of prize for you if you've made it this far. This not applicable to our live folks, but if you're listening to this as a podcast, send me an email, Jim. Say you got all the way.
Doesn't apply to our most dedicated fans. Just
that was a mistake.
Just you losers who listen after the.
If you happen to fast forward and hit upon this at the end,
he realized how many prizes he was going to have to give out as the chat was rolling by.
No, you're right. They would demand. They're kind of needy out there in the chat room. They'd be like, "Where's my prize?" So, anyways, I actually don't have anything for you, but I'd love to know if you made it all the way to the end. We had Christian on 2 weeks ago, and of course, Christian, Maple Grove Partners. He talked a little bit about that. If you haven't listened to 524, go back and listen to it. It got Marv to buy a TV. It might get you to buy one too, and that's okay. I think this is a good time, Marv. I think you made a good call right now. I think is a good time if you're getting into TVs. They're pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. So go back if you haven't heard 524, but secure, reliable, high-speed hosting, maplegrovepartners.com. If you need a plan, if you need to get hosted, does web and media hosting for as little as $10 a month. And I just released, I think this is today, I think I just released the last Cyber Frontiers. Not the last one we'll ever do, but I mean the most recent one, 065 or 65 for most people. If you want to go out and listen to it, we kind of catch up on issues from 2021, and then he looks a little ahead to 2020. I'll record him again, I think March 17th or something like that, 16th or 17th. We're going to try and get Christian on a monthly cycle with podcasting and get Cyber Frontiers kind of back on the road. So if you unsubscribe to it, or maybe you're listening and you're like, what is this Cyber Frontiers? Well, it's a pretty great podcast with Christian, and Christian knows more than the three of us put together. He's forgotten more than we know. Super smart kid. Well, Marv, you might know as much as he does, but definitely Mike and I, not a chance. So check it out, Cyber Frontiers, and just subscribe to it on whatever podcast app you download on. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. If you're listening live, stay around for a smidge of a post show. With that, we'll say goodbye.